We are live. Hello, friends, both old and new. I'm John St. Baptiste, and this is Talkin Tolkien. I have an amazing guest today, Stephen Stark from Here Be Dragons, and I'm very excited to talk to him, talk to all of you, and talk about these chapters today. So, Stephen, if you want to say hi to everybody really quick, please go right ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is, as you said, my name is Stephen Stark from Here Be Dragons. Many of you will know me. Some of you will not. I have my own little channel on YouTube where once a week on Sunday, I stream about nerdy topics of whatever grabs our interest for that day. So, yeah, that's me. That's what I do.
John Webster film. I know him. By the way, let me say hi to everybody because there's some new people here. Stephen invited some of his friends along, which is great. We have John Webster, Zeta Alpha, of course. Hi, Zeta. It's always good to see you. Danny McKay. We have the voice of geekdom. Lady Leaf Underhill.
That's Jaded
Redhead.
Yeah.
I'm a dead redhead myself, so I understand that.
Roger that.
All hail the Night's Queen. Catherine Bassett, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for staying up so late. I know it's about almost midnight for you over there.
Yeah. All hail the Night's Queen that's Jolie, my friend Jolie, and she is I think it's just after midnight for her. So thanks for staying up for this, Jolie.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody who comes out here, but it always impresses me when people stay up. And then, yeah, my one spanner who rolls them all, Kron Holler, who probably won't be able to make it today because she's got a sick kid. She lives in Australia. She's 13 hours ahead of me, and I always forget that. So, like, I'll give her a call on Instant Messenger, and I'm like, oh, shit, it's like 5 a.m. for her.
Yeah, it's tough living in a global fandom, isn't it?
It is. We also have Lady Leaf Underhill. Voice of Geekdom, if I didn't mention you before, I apologize.
Voice of Geekdom is my friend Dan, and he does Tolkien stuff too. Right now, he's doing like chapter by chapter analysis of the Silmarillion. He just released chapter 8 about I guess it's the first chapter with Ungoliant in it today. It's good stuff,
nice.
y'all.
Very
I haven't
nice.
had a chance to watch it yet, Dan, but I will.
And elves can be pretty creepy. Actually, we're going to talk about that a bit today. Ed Tollett. I'm just trying to say hi to everybody really quick. I think I caught everybody. If I missed you, I terribly apologize. I try to thank everybody personally for coming out to any of my streams. But yeah, we've got some very ethereal stuff going on here today. Is at least how I would describe it.
Ethereal is a word that came to mind several times throughout these two chapters.
Yeah, it's or even the way Tolkien describes it, it's almost like it's another world.
Right. I guess so. When we discussed the format before, you said spoiler free was the first part.
So if anybody, and hi Linda Smith, always good to see you. Always great to see you. Linda Smith is a very good friend of mine. I don't know if you've met her or not, but she's really cool.
I do not think I have.
So first, spoiler-free questions. And then Stephen and I are going to talk about these two chapters. And then after that, there will be spoilers okay questions, or what I like to call spoiler full questions. So you will get a warning. You'll get 30 seconds to like log off if you want to, because I don't want to spoil anybody who's never had the opportunity to read this before. We have a lot of people who've only seen the films. We have some people who have never seen or read or anything. So I hate spoilers. Like I'm the type of person I get up in a trailer. If it's a movie I want to watch and I'm at the moving pictures, I'll actually get up and leave during a trailer, just so I don't get any of that. And by the way, oh my gosh, comedies. Like I hate comedy trailers because it's like every funny moment you've already seen.
Yeah, I don't watch a whole lot of trailers past the first ones usually. But as far as like not spoiling this, I mean, I guess, full spoilers for everything up to this point and these two chapters.
Right, of course.
But like, so for me, the thing that struck me the most upon this reread, and admittedly, it has been a while since my last reread. But what really struck me was the etherealness and the otherness of the elves here, even compared to like the elves we met in Rivendell, who seemed...
Yeah, actually, Catherine just pointed that out.
Oh, did she? Okay. Oh yeah, I see. You're right. But they're so different, and everything in here has that touch of like otherness to it. It is not familiar either to the hobbits or to the men. And even the way he's choosing to describe it, where everything, like the hill is set with stars, and the roof of the place, or not the roof, the pillar is the trunk of the tree. The pillar in the middle of the Great Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not something that humans do. We don't build our houses around trees unless it's sort of like an artistic endeavor.
Right.
But like that is...
Like if you want to make your own little Ewok village.
Right. But we would consider that a novel thing, like it is not the norm. These people just live here and have lived like this for thousands of years. And it is like the party loses track of days. Their rest is almost supernaturally invigorating to them, and the food is different and the sounds are different. Everything is this other. And I struggle to understand exactly what Tolkien is trying to say with that, although clearly there is something going on there.
I think I think what he really wants to do with these two chapters is show just how otherworldly elves are.
Yeah, but like I also feel like he is doing that for a reason. Like he wants us to see how other the elves are, but the elves being other, does that serve some greater narrative purpose, or is that just sort of like, oh, this is a neat idea, I want to do this?
No, I think it definitely serves another purpose. I think it serves the purpose of, you have Valar, you have Maya, and elves and men and dwarves and hobbits are all like kind of on the same level, but they're all very, very, very different. And one of the things that I really love about I feel like these two chapters are really told from Sam's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Sam has a lot more to do here than I remembered.
He's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. Now, as much as I love the Bashi film, I hate the way Sam's portrayed in the Bashi films. In Ralph Bashi's Lord of the Rings, have you ever seen it? the animated film?
Yes, but good God, it's been since the 80s, I would imagine, since I saw them.
Right. It's just they make him kind of a buffoon, and I don't think he's that at all, and I don't think Tolkien thought that he was a buffoon at all. He's a common person, you know.
Yeah, he's not worldly.
Right.
But I had forgotten even that Sam actually was looked into the mirror of Galadriel as well. I had forgotten that because, you know, the films, as great as they are not 100%, you know, purist adaptation.
Oh, well, absolutely. You know, it's actually something I've brought up a few times. You can't convert one medium to another medium, word for word, line for chapter, and make it good. I mean, it wouldn't work. It would probably be pretty boring. You know,
I agree. Like the written medium and the sort of audio visual medium, they lend themselves to different strengths and different weaknesses, and you just play your strengths. But like I had forgotten that Sam also looked into the mirror, and you know, he gets the vision of basically industrialization in Hobbiton is kind of what he's seeing.
and I think it's also very important that he's tempted to go home.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course they all are, but I think he's the only one we know for sure about.
Yeah, nobody else really says what they think.
Right.
So doesn't look like we have any real questions here. I think I discussed. Oh, Catherine asked, "What? Where are these elves so cut off from everybody else in Middle Earth?"
That is something that struck me too. Like the elves are extremely isolationist.
Yeah, especially particularly the Lothlorien elves.
But as far as like why are they? Well, I would answer that at least from my point of view that they feel cut off because they with all the wonderful, beautiful, you know, ethereal descriptions of what's going on in Lothlorien, at the end of the Farewell to Lorien chapter, they're literally talking about this is the twilight, this is the winter of Lothlorien. Like you should have seen it back in the day. Mm-hmm. So they're cut off the way certain people cut themselves off from the world in the twilight of their years, where they are just remembering the good old days. And I think that's a lot of what's going on here. Like they're holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore.
And they don't want anything to change.
Right.
As many good things as I could say about Tolkien's elves. They very much don't want anything to change. They want it. They even pretty much say Galadriel even pretty much says it. You know, it is that you know. I guess I'm going to have to go into the West,
right?
And they almost. This sounds kind of condescending, but they don't want to accept the fact that the world changes.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that's condescending at all. I think that's, but you look at the elves themselves who live for thousands of years and don't age. They are unchanging themselves. The fact that the world is changing around them is difficult for them to accept. I guess my bigger question would be like, what is it narratively that's going on here? You know, what is Tolkien trying to say it's very interesting stuff. And, if if I chewed on it for days on end, maybe I would think of something. I'm not the biggest Tolkien aficionado in the world. I mean, I love this story, don't get me wrong. I've read the books a couple of times, but like I'm not a student of Tolkien the way some of my friends are. But like the greats are always saying they're saying what they're saying on the page, but then they're saying something bigger with the themes they're working with. And the elves, because they're so prominent, I feel like they have to represent something. And maybe they do sort of represent this idea of the unchanging aristocracy. You know, I don't want things to change, but Galadriel, even by the end of the chapters, has kind of come to the realization that the change is coming, or has happened already, whether she wants it to or not.
Right. I don't think I would say she's realized it. I would say she's accepted it. I think it's something she's realized for quite some time now.
Okay, that's a fair point.
But I think she's accepted it.
Oh, Dan, voice of geekdom, raises an interesting point. That's what the three rings were supposed to be for, preserving against change.
Yeah, to try and keep this idyllic world. And you know, part of Tolkien, I mean, part of why he wrote what he wrote is you have to remember this is a young person growing up in the early 20th century, and he watched where he grew up go from this idyllic countryside area to an industrialized society. And you know, he's famous for saying the most horrible thing that was ever invented was the internal combustion engine. And so I think a lot of it is almost. I almost wonder if he wrote a lot of it from the perspective of Galadriel. Like, this is something I just have to accept. It's the way the world's going.
Mm. Maybe, like, because there's clearly a longing in the elf people, and Galadriel is probably like the best window into the elven mindset that we have. Although even amongst the elves, she's different. Like, Galadriel is different from the rest of them, and I guess I attribute that to her Maiar grandmother, or is it her mother or her grandmother?
It was her mother, if I remember correctly.
I bet Dan knows. I bet Voice of Geek could just tell you. He's literally working his way through the Silmarillion right now. So
yeah, that's what you were telling me. I have to check his channel out.
Yeah, but so she reads to me as very like elves are alien. She is something like she's a fifth dimensional being.
Angelic, almost.
Yeah. Well, Maiar, you know.
Exactly. And I love the way, like I said, I really feel like these two chapters are almost entirely written from Sam's perspective.
Right. Dan, my question was Galadriel has a Maiar who is either her mother or her grandmother. He's making dinner. Didn't hear the question. But I kind of agree with you that, as you said, Sam has a lot more to do, and Sam is the most sort of like plain Jane man on the street character. He embodies the reader more than anybody else. So, you know, I feel like when you're going to the most foreign place, having the character who has the least foreign mindset be the point of view for the audience makes a lot of really good sense.
Oh, absolutely agreed. Zeta Alpha says, yes, Sam's a salt of the earth person.
Right.
it he we were talking about this a bit in the pre-stream, and I've spoken to this before with some other guests. Everybody else is some form of aristocracy.
Mm-hmm.
Legolas is a prince. Boromir's the son of the steward.
Right.
Aragorn's destined to be king.
Even
Frodo,
even the other hobbits are from wealthy families, at least.
yeah, like Frodo's got some loot. I might actually ask him for a loan because, I hit him up for that. Peregrine is, the son of the Took.
Right, the Took.
Yeah, the Took. And Meriadoc is, he's very high up in the Brandybuck family. So everybody else, and Gimli even is like kind of nobility. I mean,
right. He's from a prominent family, at least.
Right. But Sam's just like
Sam, the gardener.
dude.
Really, Galadriel did not have a Maiar as a ancestor? I could have sworn she did.
Yeah, I thought she did too. I apologize. Thank you, Voice of Geekdom, for correcting me.
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong, Dan, and I'm just saying it now.
But she is an old orc.
She is very old. I do know that. Like the oldest in Middle Earth, I would think.
Oh, okay. Voice, you think of Elrond is related to the Maiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that very much.
Thanks, Dan. I don't think you're wrong anymore, for the record. But she still just reads as so different to me to the other elves for whatever reason. And it could just be that she's very old and she has one of the 3 rings. So.
And she saw, she's actually seen the land in the West. She's actually been there. That's where she came from. In fact, that's part of her great tragedy that we'll get to afterwards with the spoiler stuff. But she's witnessed so much in her life. Oh, hi, Santivia. It's good to see you.
Yeah, like when we get to the spoilery part, I will have a lot to say about Galadriel.
Oh, yeah.
She was the best part of both of these chapters to me. Although I also found that there was a lot more from Boromir in these chapters than I remembered too. And nope, that's for spoiler talk. But Boromir had a lot to say, at least during these chapters.
He did, and you realize that he's a very torn person.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knows what is right to do, but he also knows what he thinks would be best for the most people.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very torn. It's like I said, I love the fact that that nobody's internal thoughts are expressed. at the beginning of the second of these two chapters, when they're having their last night together in Lorien.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's internal thoughts are expressed, but you can kind of sense them.
Well, and one of the things that I was keeping in mind as I was reading through this time is, and I know, Tolkien does not always, he doesn't do one-to-one correlations in what he writes, although he is still heavily influenced by several things, including, there is his religious beliefs, but also his wartime experiences. And I kept thinking about the influence of his wartime experiences on these chapters, which are, there's no war, there's no battle being fought here. There's no, great action sequence or anything like that. No battle. But at this point, they have been through some battle, and this is their first real, like, R&R afterward.
Yeah, their first respite.
Mm-hmm.
Their first R&R. That's a good way to put it. I mean, the ship didn't drop them off and say, "Here are the bars, here are the whorehouses. We'll see you in 48 hours." But definitely their first respite.
Right. Well, and
you need that after something that traumatic.
You do, but like thinking about, again, I'm just trying to relate this to the sort of wartime experience. The way they're grieving, but then they don't want to think about their grief because they're resting and they're actually recuperating. And then there's also this idea of like, if you're a soldier and you go off to World War I and you experience the Somme for the first time, and then you live through that, and then you get rotated and you go to Paris for a few weeks, it might feel like going to Lothlorien, especially if you're a pastoral Englishman from the countryside who's never even really seen London, which at that time was an industrial powerhouse, so it was choked with smoke all the time, whereas Paris is the city of lights, and it would feel like you're going to a magical place. So I wonder if that figured into his writing process at all. But it had that feeling of, okay, so they've rotated to the rear and they're going to get some rest and relaxation, but they're thousands of miles from home, so no matter what the local culture is, it's going to feel fantastical to them. And it's an experience a lot of young men have had that went off to war.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've never really thought of it that way, but it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you just saw this person who not only you admire, but who you look up to and feel like is your leader, die. Give his life for you. And, you just saw this like, 2 or 3 days ago.
Right.
And you need a moment to calm down.
And as someone who did serve in the military, now I never served in an active war zone, but like I've lost friends along the way. And there's this idea of like you grieve, but then you don't want to think about it so that you don't grieve too much.
Oh yeah, I think it's that way with anybody, but particularly with a soldier, somebody who serves in the military. I think it's more poignant, just because a lot of times those people who die are the same age as you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't know personally if you've ever had anybody who was a close friend of yours who had a really bad drug problem, and died because of it. And it's just like you want to address it, you want to mourn, but on the same note, you want to just be like, got to keep pushing on.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like when you're burying somebody who's 17 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Life goes on. It doesn't stop for our grief.
Exactly. Absolutely agreed.
Yeah. Okay. What else? I mean, I just need to get to the spoilery part. That's all. Well, I mean, by all means, let's take the conversation where it needs to go. But like, I'm going to jump off when we get to spoilery bits, when I can talk about the larger legendarium and the story that is to come. Also,
absolutely. So we have Sam. They're talking about Gandalf. Well, first we meet Galadriel and Celeborn, and when he finds out that Gandalf died, he's like, "Oh, I would have never let any of you in here."
Right, if I knew that you let Gandalf die and you summoned up a Balrog and all that. But I've got this thing to say. Yes, I highlighted my book, y'all. It's the paperback, don't worry. But I highlighted it so I could find these. But Galadriel, I think, it's not the first time she speaks, but like, as you say, Celeborn, who I believe Zeta Alpha just put a quote in the chat about Celeborn being the wisest, but we hear Galadriel speak like against him. He may be the wisest and a great giver of gifts, but she says to him after he talks about, I wouldn't have let you even in here. He would be rash indeed that said that thing. Like, she's looking at him and saying, you are speaking out of turn, Celeborn. If our folk had been exiled long and far from Lorien, who of us, I'm paraphrasing, would pass through here and not wish to look upon their ancient home, though it had become an abode of dragons? She's like, look, if you were in Gimli's place, Celeborn, you would have done the exact same thing. So
yeah.
Don't be rash in saying I wouldn't. You shouldn't have let him in.
And it wasn't even Gimli's decision; it was Gandalf's.
Mm-hmm. And she even says that, like, Gandalf is blameless because, like, even I can't discern what his true purpose and path is. And if you're going to blame someone, blame Gandalf, because these people were just following him.
Yeah, he was their leader. And, I really love also in a little bit, well, we'll get to that, but Aragorn being torn about what he should do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi, Micah Clark. Welcome to the channel. Good to see you.
Yeah.
How dare you mark your book? Oh, my gosh.
Scolded.
Do you know how much highlighter and handwritten notes and underlining is in this? A hell of a lot.
But I accept your chastisement, though. But only because, never mind. I accept it. It's my book, though. Damn it, you can't stop me. It's already done.
But yeah, I love that she looks in everyone's eyes, and they all have these personal thoughts. And then later, Boromir says he feels like I was being tempted, and they all say, I could have what I want and no one else would know.
Mm-hmm. But what does it say about the heroes of our story that they're given that? Like, every one of them agrees. I was shown that I could have what I want, and if I turned back, I'd be the only one that knew about it. So can I say that I would do the same as them? I don't know. I don't know that I would or wouldn't. I'd like to think that I would, but like, until I'm shown exactly what it is that my heart desires and then told, you can have this, and nobody's going to know that you sort of turned your back on the world to do it.
Right. Well, that's the thing about temptation, whether one's a person of faith or not. You can be tempted to do things you're not supposed to do. It doesn't matter whether somebody has any faith or no. You can be tempted to do things that you're not supposed to do. But then you wonder to yourself, if I did and nobody knew about it, would it really matter?
Right? But we also have in that same chapter, we're told that if any of them turn back, all is lost. So they all have to choose to reject it. And that's a powerful metaphor about choosing to serve, to fight in a war. Now, Tolkien fought in World War I, but he can also be drawing upon the stories of World War II, which is a sort of a much more like ethically and morally motivated war than World War I. World War I was very much like we have all this cool new technology. Let's shoot it at each other and see what happens. But World War II was very much about clashing ideologies, not so much like I want your land.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you have to remember that was the majority of the period that he was writing this book was during World War II.
Right.
And his son was over in the Western theater. I mean, literally, his son was over there serving in the military.
Right. But like this idea that like I have to choose to go forward into the sort of the darkness and not turn back to the thing I want. Else everyone is going to fail. It's again that company of soldiers working together. I have to watch your back because that's my job. And while I'm there, it becomes your job to watch my back. And the idea that your sort of entire military objectives can be defeated by one soldier not choosing to go do his duty. Now that's a bit reductionist, but the idea, I think the idea is still present that like it is incumbent on the soldier to choose to go be a soldier. Because that's the only way that you can succeed. And again, as you say, he was writing this during World War II, where choosing not to fight was like allowing a certain ideology to win by your own inaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we were talking about supporting other soldiers or whatever. I know you come from an Army background. I never served, but I come from a Navy family.
Okay.
And that's why you have a brig. Because it while you're on a ship, it's, I think, probably 10 times as strict as any other branch of the military. On the other hand, the minute you hit port, it's like, please go let off some steam.
Right. All bets are off.
Like, but you've got to brig because the thing is, if you're on a ship, if you make a bad decision, if you fuck up at your job, like that's 1,000 people who could die.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who are supposed to be your fellow sailors, and so that's why the in the Navy the discipline is so strict when you're on the ship, but afterwards it's like go let off some steam,
Right.
like please. And that's kind of what they do here. I mean, Frodo's not hitting up a brothel or anything, but
I doubt there's many brothels in Lorien. Just gonna put it out there.
there might be one or two just for people.
I mean, I haven't conducted a thorough survey of the city, but I do think there's probably not. Just gonna put it out there. Although, if there was, like, maybe,
I guess you've got a thing for blondes.
I've got a thing for elves.
Catherine Bassett, they start to feel the weight of the quest at this point. Yes,
well, they've suffered their first major loss, and they've all feared for their lives directly in the moment too. When they're passing through Moria, every one of them is in mortal peril right then and there, can die at any second. When they started out, there's like, we're in mortal peril on this quest, but like when they left Rivendell, okay, we're in danger, but we're not in danger right now. They've been through some of that.
Well, also, it's like, you think about some of the most terrifying moments you've had in your life.
Do I have to?
During the moment, if you're a relatively logical person, you can deal with it. It's dealing with the aftermath. It's like, I mean, that's what PTSD is. It's like, yeah, during a given moment, I could deal with the situation. I could Aragorn it up. I could be like, okay, hey, here's what we're going to do, guys.
Yeah, there's a difference between living through it and living with it.
Exactly. That's a bloody great way to put it. I'm going to write that down, actually.
Okay. Catherine Bassett asked, do you think the ring gets stronger from Lothlorien?
Oh.
I hadn't considered that, so I'm going to take a moment to just chew on that for a second.
Yeah, I want to think about that one before I answer it. I don't want to answer it impulsively.
I mean, my gut answer is no, but like, clearly you're asking, Catherine, because you think maybe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Oh, shit.
It's a good question.
That's a bloody good question. I think there's the possibility that it coming as close as it did to one of the three.
I'm sorry. I'm reading the chat, and I think Linda Smith is commenting about elven brothels. After all, Gimli and Legolas disappeared nightly. I don't think they're going to the brothel, though. They're out on a date. Anyway, I digress. I've totally derailed your train of thought. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's hilarious. That's great. So you think Legolas and Gimli like were dating as
I
opposed to
should. Why not?
hitting up the local red light district?
Maybe. I mean, although in all honesty, it's very clear that Gimli kind of something happens where he falls in love with Galadriel for whatever reason because she's so pretty. But
And she
like
spoke his language to him.
she spoke his language to him. But there's also like I don't want to again. I'm not trying to be too reductive, but like, oh look, a beautiful woman. I'm in love now. Sorry, y'all, that ain't love. But there's also an otherness to her, and there's also like it's very clear that she can see into the hearts and minds of everyone around her, and
Well, when me personally, I think when she speaks his language to him and comforts him in his I think he immediately wants to become her knight, so to speak, like in the chivalric
right,
French 15th century sense
the
of the word. He
right,
wants to
the
be
idyllic
her
thing.
knight. It's not a sexual love. I don't. I think if Gimli got naked with Galadriel, he'd be like, I don't know what the hell to do. I think it's much more like chivalric love.
Yeah, or like maybe even I might even describe it as a sort of religious reverence of her in a way.
Yeah, yeah. I could definitely latch onto that. But so Sam's talking to Frodo, and they're talking about Gandalf, and he's talking about magic, and if I might find the passage. Where he says, where Frodo asks Sam, he's like, well, now you've seen elves, because that's what Sam was so excited about from the first place. And he's like, what do you think? And he's like, I think they're above my thoughts, my opinions. But I do want to see some elven magic, and then gets to see some elven magic.
And he regrets it almost immediately. And
Magic.
that's the thing too, like you showed him his heart's desire, and he was able to turn away from that in order to accept his role in the quest. But the mirror then showed him something he feared. And that was almost enough to do where showing him what his desired was not.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to stick a pin in this one because that's definitely something I want to talk about when we get to the spoilers. But it shows him what he fears. And Galadriel says, the mirror shows you things that were, things that are, things that may come to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll never come to pass unless you turn away from your path to try and avoid them.
Right.
Precognition would be a nightmare. I'd probably be dead by now if I had precognition. I'd just be a wreck. I'd either be dead or I'd be like in Bellevue.
Yeah, I think it might drive
Or
me
Bellevue,
nuts.
probably like some little dirt cheap hospital, but still, you know what I mean.
I do know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it would drive me nuts. Like maybe literally. But that's a common trope that I think he's borrowing that more or less directly from like the Norns, that would foretell your future, and like you would do everything you could to prevent it, but like it was by the actions of you trying to prevent it that actually caused it to come true. At least Galadriel has the good nature to tell you, if you try to make this not happen, that will make it happen.
Oh yeah, I mean it's not just the Norns. I mean, yeah, like Tolkien leans so much on Norse mythology, but he also leans a lot on Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
That's Oedipus's story. You know, if Oedipus's father hadn't, I can't remember his name for the life of me, hadn't tried to avoid that, none of it would have happened.
Hamlet, same thing.
Hamlet, yeah, absolutely. It you know, the cost of knowing what might happen is knowing what might happen.
Yeah. Oh, that's that's like one of those "be careful what you wish for" type of things.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite quotes is Neil Gaiman. The cost of having what you want is getting what you wanted.
Right.
And on the same note, if you turn away from your path, I mean, and Sam figures it out really quickly. Did I say quick? I apologize. Quickly, because it's an adverb, not an adjective. If Sam, he turns away from it really quickly. He says, "Yeah, hey, I signed up for this. I'm gonna do what I signed up for, even if this is actually happening, even if this is actually going on."
Yeah, I've got the quote right here. I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo, or not at all. But I hope I do get back someday. If what I've seen turns out true, somebody's going to catch it hot. So, yeah, you're right. It basically within a couple of paragraphs of saying, I'm going to go home because they're not going to cut down my old gaffer's tree. Within a couple of paragraphs, he's like, okay, hot-headed response, but I'm going to stick it through with it.
Yeah, and I think it really shows something of his character. There's also the another quote that I just noticed, and I'm sorry I'm jumping all over the place here.
Let's jump, man.
But well, you're chaotic good, so.
Oh, I'm here for it.
It's when we leave this land that we shall miss Gandalf worse, I'm thinking. And yeah, I think that's very poignant. Voice of Geekdom question: what do you think the two hobbits actually gained from their experience with the mirror? Would they have done anything differently if Galadriel hadn't shown them it?
I've got to be honest. I'm not sure if Sam gained or lost anything from that, other than just it might have steeled his resolve.
Yeah, I think that's how I would put it as well. I think both of them steal their resolve.
But for me, from Frodo, I almost feel like, I mean, yes, he saw some things in the mirror. I think what Frodo saw was more for the benefit of the audience. I think where Frodo gained or lost the most, and I would say gained, was in making the decision whether or not to look. Because that's actually a big part of the conversation before he actually looks is, will he or won't he? And Galadriel's like, I'm not going to tell you that you should or shouldn't. You know, he's learning to make decisions that have potentially very weighty consequences. You know, so for me, like, I think it would have changed him if he hadn't looked, because that fundamentally changes the nature of what he. I'm struggling to put this into words. The fact that Frodo chooses to look says something about his character, and I think he would be a very different character if he chose to not look.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many things about the character of Frodo that if it had happened differently, he would not be the person that he is. I mean, I think it's like that with anybody, not just in this book, but like in general. You know, your decisions a lot of times affect you more than external things. A quote that I always liked is not from Tolkien, but it's life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that's true. People are saying things like Jolie says, "You are the choices you make," and Zeta Alpha says, "Decisions guide your life." I mean, that's all sort of like the same idea. Like, there is power in the choosing. As somebody who is something of an existentialist, choosing is part of becoming a full person. Because if you were like, I had no choice, well, then you are just a leaf on the river being carried downstream. If you don't make a choice, or if you're a type of person that says, I didn't have a choice, then you are removing your own agency from yourself. And to self-actualize means you have to make choices.
Absolutely. Here's a good question. Catherine Bassett. Why did Lothlorien bother Boromir so much more than the rest of the company?
White privilege? Minas Tirith is the White City, you know. It's this gleaming gem on the hill, so to speak. I mean, I think, you know, it's kind of a joke answer, but I think it's kind of a legit answer too, somewhat. As far as he's concerned, Gondor and Minas Tirith are like the pinnacle of society and culture in the world, you know.
Well, also one has to take into mind that as far as he's concerned, Minas Tirith and Gondor are the only thing holding Mordor back.
Yeah, and
so he wants to do anything to prevent that.
And the elves aren't really helping. Not really.
Now they're just like, hey, I'm going to do my elf thing. You know, I'm going to hide here in the woods.
Did I misspeak and indicate that Boromir was not human? I might have. I know Boromir is human. Maybe I misspoken, but yeah, Minas Tirith is like the shining city on a hill. It's sort of the pinnacle of the race of men.
And the last bastion of what had been Numenor.
Right.
But yeah, so, you know, Sam takes a look, sees all this happening, has his moment, and he decides, you know, hey, I'm gonna I'm going to stick to the path I'm supposed to. And then
Right.
Frodo, looks in the mirror and he sees some pretty messed up shit.
He does. Like the first thing he sees is a vision of Gandalf the White, but he sees Gandalf dressed in white. I'm not going to talk any more about that for the non-spoiler portion. But that's the first thing he sees. The vision now changed. He sees Frodo walking restlessly about his room. Then there was a pause. Many swift scenes. He feels like he's watching history. The sea rose and raged in a great storm. Then he saw the sun sinking. There's the silhouette of a ship, and like I don't really get all those references. Again, I'm not the deepest in the lore, so I got to be honest, Frodo. I know you're confused. I'm confused too, my man.
One thing I bring up quite often on this channel is in this read through, I'm really picking up a lot more about Frodo's dreams and how they're prophetic, and it actually it's the contrast between his dreams and what he sees in the mirror. Like the mirror represents possibilities. Whereas the dreams he has are like, this is kind of etched in stone. And he sees himself going away on the ship, and then of course he sees.
Okay. Light bulb just went off with the ship,
and of course he sees the eye,
right?
And and then another thing that happens right after that is Frodo always offers the ring up to somebody else. I think that's a very important point. I think that's another thing to stick a pin in.
Yeah, like something that you really just don't see anyone else do.
Like he doesn't want it. He offered it to Gandalf. He didn't want to take it when he was in Rivendell. He offers it to Galadriel, which gets to one of my favorite scenes.
Oh God, yes.
Particularly in the movie.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Kate Blanchett in sort of like photo negative, talking about, being a beautiful but terrible queen. Like, and even after that, which, by the way, they really kind of made that very dramatic in the movie, and it does not read that way in the book. But
well,
even after that, Sam was still like, I still think you should give it to her. And Galadriel's like, you should give it to her because she'd set things right, and she'd lay the smackdown on our enemies. And she's like, that's how it would start.
Yeah.
But like, it's that age-old power corrupts, and it's called the Ring of Power for a reason.
No, lady, he answered. To tell you the truth, I wondered what you're talking about. I saw a star through your fingers. But if you pardon me speaking out, I think my master was right. I wish you'd take this ring and put things right. You'd stop them digging up the gaffer. You'd stop them digging up the gaffer and turning him adrift. You'd make some folk pay for their dirty work. I would, she said. That's how it would begin. But it would not stop with that.
Right.
Yeah, and it really brings up a point. A lot of people do things because they think they're the right thing to do. But in coming to do so, you sacrifice a bit of yourself.
Yeah, but it also sort of like indicates that this is a thing that she's been waiting for, that she knew was coming, and that she herself was not sure which path she would take in the end.
Yeah.
So it's one of those you never know till you never know what you're going to do till you're in the situation, even if you're a 7,000-year-old mystical elf queen.
I'll go to the west and I'll remain Galadriel.
Mm-hmm.
And
I would imagine her mirror showed her some futures where she did not remain Galadriel.
Absolutely. That's always the thing. So getting to the Farewell to Lorien chapter, and these are two rather short chapters, and we've been talking quite some time about them. But
yeah. Oh man, you don't. I could talk. Listen, I can talk for 2 hours about nothing. Trust me, I do it every week.
The gifts are given. Kellenbor pretty much says, like, hey guys, sorry, I didn't mean to be a dick. I was just like really upset at the time. We keep jumping all over the place.
Oh yeah, I warned you, man. I warned you.
And Aragorn, this is a very important moment to me in the book. Is he stands on the hillside for the last time.
Okay.
Because we find out later, and I don't think this is too spoilery, that's where he met Arwen.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and
like again, sometimes the historic pieces, I miss it because I don't have all that context necessarily.
And he stands on that hilltop for the last time, and it's like, well, once again, these two chapters I think are kind of like, I know a lot of people are big Ice and Fire fans.
Mm-hmm.
Let go of the boy.
Yeah, kill the boy, let the man be born.
Yeah, and I think that's happening to all these characters in these two chapters. When Legolas and Gimli aren't at the red light district.
Yep.
And even then, I guess they're kind of killing the boy. Excuse me.
So, yeah, I really want to get to the spoiler talk, man.
Yeah. Let's cover the. I would like to cover the gift giving.
Okay.
Before we do, really quick.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, it's your channel. I'm just.
No. I'm all about the spoiler talk too. But I do think the gift giving is really important.
I kind of love it. Also, like, yeah, they give nice gifts with the elven cloaks and the lembas bread and all that. But the best thing is that Sam is like, here's some dirt. It's not going to help you. Not now, not during your war, but like when you go home, trust me, this is good dirt.
It's just really good dirt.
It's really good dirt. But like, that is so funny to me. And I don't even really know why, that like, it's this beautiful ornate box with a G inlaid in it, and inside is some dirt.
And a seed.
And a seed. Okay. I mean, I get it's magical and it's mystical, but still, it's just it's dirt, man. It's dirt.
Yeah, it's like you got a golden belt,
Oh,
you
yeah.
got a bow.
I got a jar of dirt. I got a jar of dirt.
And I also, to me, it's such an emotional moment when Gimli.
This is like the first thing I was going to talk about in spoiler talk too. But yes, the Gimli, because this actually relates way back to another story. The giving of the three hairs, like
it does.
It does. And like this is one of those stories from the Legendarium that I do kind of know.
But
Thanks, Dan.
She's like, "What gift would you ask of me?" Oh shit! My camera's all over the place. What's going on here? Sorry about that.
That was funny. I thought you were about to show us something.
She says, "What gift would you ask of me?" And he says, "I wouldn't." You know, it gets back totally to the chivalric thing we were talking about before.
Yeah, and he's like, "Well, okay.
If I could have one thing, it would be one golden hair from your head."
Yeah, and like he doesn't even want to ask her for it. You desire something, name it. I bid you. And he's like, I'm permitted to ask, nay. I would not ask for such a gift, but you commanded me to name my desire. It's, as you say, it's this very sort of chivalric ideal. Like, I wouldn't dare to ask for it, but you gave me a command to name my desire. That's the only reason I'm going to tell you.
Right.
And I mean, it's a little bit creepy from a modern standpoint, like, but it's sort of like an idealized act of devotion. I see where he's going. And it becomes so much more meaningful when you understand the history of Galadriel and her hair.
Absolutely. Is there anything else in these two chapters that you would like to cover before we get to spoilers?
No, there's really not. I mean, you know,
like I said, we've been jumping all over the place, but
that's my nature. I'm sorry.
It's your nature. It's okay. And you don't need to apologize. All right, so 30 seconds, people. There are going to be spoilers. I'm going to get up really quick because there's a mouse walking around that only has to pee once a year. He got my bladder. I got his. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
And everybody think of all the spoiler full questions you want to ask. By the way, here be dragons.
Hi, I'm going to keep everybody entertained. For those of you that haven't seen it up to this point, I'm going to show you. So this is my bedroom, but it used to be my daughter's bedroom back in the day. And my sister made a painting that is actually relevant to the conversation we're having, because right there is a boat shaped like a swan with an elf and a long black pole and a beautiful lady in white standing. So yeah, the swan ship of Lorien is painted on my wall because it used to be my daughter's bedroom. Oh, hi, Lauren's Corner. How are you? Yeah. So,
okay, so
look,
talk.
Great timing, man. Great timing. I just talked about my swan boat that I showed you before already.
Yeah, I love that painting.
So, like that right there, that's an actual. Wait a minute. I'm bad at this. That is a Malorn tree. I promise you, it is.
I want a Malloran tree.
Me too. Okay, so spoilery talk.
Spoilery talk.
Okay,
Spoilery questions. Anybody?
But okay, so the first thing we just talked about Gimli asking for the gift. It is said that the skill of the dwarves is in their hands rather than in their tongue, she said. Yet this is not true of Gimli, for none have ever made to me a request so bold and yet so courteous, except that, is it Finarfin that made the Silmaril? I don't remember who made the Silmarils themselves, but I do know that he asked Galadriel for her hair so he could catch. He thought the most beautiful thing in the world was the shine of the trees off of Galadriel's hair. And 3 times he asked for a hair. Feanor made the Silmarils. Thank you, Dan. But he asked her 3 times for a hair from her head so that he could craft it and make a gem that would capture its beauty. And she always refused him because she's Galadriel and she could see into his heart and she knew it came from a sort of like selfish place. So the fact that Feanor, the elf that created the Silmarils, the most beautiful things in the world, asked for her hair and she continually said, no, no, no. Then comes this dwarf and says, I want 1 hair, and she gives him 3, which is why it created. Okay, then the lady unbraided her long tresses and cut off 3 golden hairs and laid them in Gimli's hands. These words shall go with the gift, she said. I do not foretell, for all foretelling is now vain. On the one hand lies darkness, and on the other only hope. But if hope should not fail, then I say to you, Gimli, son of Gloin, that your hands shall flow with gold, yet over you gold shall have no dominion. And like there is a very. Right after he asked for the hairs, the elves stirred and murmured with astonishment, and Celeborn gazed at the dwarf in wonder. Like, because they know the story about Feanor asking for her hair. So the gravity of what she's choosing to do is not lost on them.
No, not at all. And you know, that's the thing. I mean, well, we're into spoilers now, so I can talk about this. I mean, Feanor, like, if you read the Silmarillion, a lot of elves aren't very nice people. You know, Feanor was not a nice person. Neither were his kids.
Right. I mean...
and, yeah, the fact that she gives, as All Hail the Night's Queen points out, protection against gold fever. You know, because the dwarves are known for desiring precious things. You know, and you know, that's one of the reasons that when he made the rings, Sauron wasn't really able to take over the dwarves because the way the rings work, they magnify a person. And the dwarves don't really desire power, but they do desire gold and gems and things like that. And they magnify, in general, your worst traits, except for the 3 that were made for the elves because they were never touched by Sauron.
Right. Yeah, because they weren't crafted by Sauron. They were crafted by, again, like, I'm working my way through the Silmarillion again, and Dan is very helpful, but like the names, man, the names of these old elves, like Finfarfin, Falfin, or whatever, like there's just too much sometimes, and they're too similar. Like, name your son something that doesn't start with F, for crying out loud. I'll remember him.
F's and C's.
Right.
Kind of like the opposite of me in high school, but that's just that was very
Give me a second, but I got there with you, man.
I was mostly an A and B kid. I got really upset because I got a C in one class once. I was terribly upset about it.
Yeah. I was a good student when I wanted to be. Please do not ask any follow-up questions. But yeah, as far as like the spoilery stuff, there's clearly like Frodo sees things that will happen that he is not going to be there to witness himself.
Yeah.
Like with Gandalf the White. He doesn't know that Gandalf is even alive again until he sees him at Rivendell after the destruction of the ring. So the fact that he is not
on the field, in Ithilien.
Right. Sorry, misspoke. Don't know it as well as you do.
No,
But,
that's
like,
okay.
It's not until after the destruction of the One Ring, at any rate, that he even knows Gandalf is alive again. So he spends the whole rest of the journey thinking Gandalf is dead, even though he sees in the mirror that he is in fact alive. He just doesn't even know what he's looking at, which makes me wonder why show that to Frodo other than to show it to the reader.
Mm-hmm. And it's something we don't even find out for
for like not till the next book.
60, 70 pages. And Zeta Alpha has a point. Frodo even saw his end with the elf ship.
Which is where that light bulb moment I had when you mentioned that. Oh my gosh. So for the record, I'm a smoker and this guy is smoking a cigarette in front of me on this stream. I mean, can you be any more rude? It's your channel, man. I'm just messing with you.
You're the one who chooses not to smoke in your house.
There is an asthmatic in my house. It's just, it is what it is.
Well, then that's a very good decision to make. I never smoke around my mom. She has a lot of lung and heart issues, and
yeah, it's my mom too.
So even if I'm like going over there to clean out her gutters, like I don't smoke. So I apologize for my rudeness. Hi, Amy Blackfire.
Yep. Hi, Amy.
And yeah, Linda has a point. He saw the dream, the ship sailing west, when he was in Bombadil's house, and he has that dream another time too.
Right. Yeah, it's Tolkien definitely knew where he was going with this, with the imagery that he was choosing to invoke. Even if he didn't know exactly the path to take to get there, he knew the end point. He knew what he was trying to talk about. And for me, it's like anytime he's talking about stars or boats, he is discussing, so like it's almost always wrapped up in ancient elven stuff, because the boats are what take elf to Valinor. Like not a whole lot of human explorers get mentioned, but the elves are constantly sailing all over the place. And there is it Erendil that is the Evan star. Like literally, it's a star, but it's also a ship.
Yes,
that flies through the sky, like which ties the symbolism of those two things together. And elves were born under a sunless, starlit sky, and they lived without sun and moon for thousands of years. The Eldar, I think that literally it means like children of the stars. Am I making that up? I don't know, but I do know that the elves are very closely tied to stars and ships both. So a lot of times when I see ships being mentioned in here, I'm thinking like, what does this have to do with the elves? But I guess in this situation, what it had to do was that's Frodo's eventual destiny, if you will, was to take the ship to Valinor.
Yeah, it's something we come to at the end of the story. And it actually, the quote doesn't come from the book. It actually comes from the film. When he says, we saved the Shire, but not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the few things that I think was done wrong with the film was leaving out the scouring the Shire, but that's my personal view. I understand why it was done for dramatic purposes.
Right.
But I personally, I feel like that's kind of the penultimate moment in the entire book.
Right.
Is that
I'm sorry, we keep trying to talk at the same time.
Oh, I'm sorry. That you've gone through all this, but now, like, you come back home, and home's a freaking mess.
Yeah, that must have been what it was like to go off to fight in World War II, and then come home to see what London looked like after the Battle of Britain.
Yeah.
It was just nothing but broken concrete and bricks everywhere, and yeah. So, like, from a film standpoint, after you have the big hero moment, to have that happen, it is kind of an anticlimax at that point, and it feels like, from a narrative point of view, I don't know that it works, but I understand why it works in the book and why it doesn't work on the film.
Yeah.
So while you might feel like you wanted it, I'm actually kind of glad they don't have it.
Oh, a lot of people are like, Bombadil wasn't in the book. I'm so glad that Tom Bombadil was not in the film. I think he would have been.
I'll agree with you on that one, though. Like, fantastic character on paper, but like you've got this weird rotund man dancing around in a hat and yellow cowboy boots, talking to trees. It's like it's going to derail your whole film. It's got a very different tone and vibe to the rest of the story.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Okay, so spoilers. You said you wanted to go nuts talking about spoilers.
Well, the Galadriel thing was one where we talked, the fact that the giving of her gift in this is like, it's such a full circle moment for the story. And it shows the difference in the way that Gimli is engaging with the elves as opposed to a lot of the other dwarves, because they are driven by that avarice, and she's like, yeah, I'm super powerful. I'm a queen. You can have anything you want. And he's like, I want one hair. And I'm not even, the only reason I'm asking is because you told me I had to ask, or I had to tell you at least what it is that I wanted.
Right.
And like her, just the way that she rejected Feanor, who was, really highly respected in his day and age. And then we all know at this point, elves and dwarves are not very good friends. But like, and also you see from that moment on, Legolas changes the way he interacts with Gimli. And by the end of the chapter, they're fast friends. And that's all because, like, he's not friends because of the ongoing beef between elves and men. But there comes a moment where he looks at how Galadriel engaged with him, knowing Galadriel can see into the hearts and minds of others, and is giving him the gift that she wouldn't give to Feanor. Like,
Yeah.
that has got to fundamentally change the way Legolas views Gimli, and it changes the dynamic between them really from that point on. Because by the end, they go out every night. We established earlier that they're probably dating, but they go out at night every night together, and they are the best of friends from this point on. And it says it even in this chapter. They became fast friends.
I still think they were hitting the red light district myself.
Man, either one is possible. I'm going to write 2 different fanfics tonight. But as far as, like, there's the foreshadowing of what's to come, of the type of things that they're going to face. I also like that there's a lot of name drops for places that we'll see later on, like the hills of Emmanuel and the Deadlands, which are places some of the Fellowship will see, some of them will not. Frodo and Sam specifically will, they'll head through Emmanuel, which sounds like not a great place. And then the
no, Emmanuel sounds like the exact opposite of a great place.
Right. Like, oh, look, rocks. Oh, look, jagged rocks. And over there, sharp, jagged rocks. Sounds like
you live in Texas. You're used to that, aren't you?
Oh, the part of Texas I live in is very green. No, I do not live in the tumbleweed desert part. You'd be surprised how many, like, basically nothing but trees around here. If it's not,
I'm quite famous for having a very heavy foot. I can say I do not recommend it. Please, nobody on this channel do this. But you can make it from Dallas to Cincinnati in 13 hours.
That sounds feasible.
If you have an RX-7, you can do it.
Like, if you're lucky with, like, police car placement.
Well, I mean, your whole stretch from Dallas to Texarkana in the middle of the night, like,
ain't much out there.
If you get pulled over, you have to be, like, blind and drunk.
Okay.
Because there's no way you're not going to notice a police car. And then you just work your way up. But yeah, I don't recommend that to anybody. Please don't do that. When I was young and far more hormonal, it sounded like a good idea, but now that I'm a man, I've put my childish ways behind me.
Right. But I will say this too, like, one of the things that really strikes me, well, I don't know how spoiled, I just want to be fully free to discuss it in all ways. But one of the things that really strikes me, the elves are so different. Like, yes, come in, rest, gifts, information, directions on where you need to go. And, like, you're being told, be careful about this place and follow this side of the river, not that side, but get out here and cross there. But none of us is going with you. Not one of us. They're all so detached from the world that they're not even willing to give, like, direct personal assistance. But again, they're all looking to the west at this point, which elves used to look up at the stars.
Right.
Now they look west.
Because it once again it gets into what we were talking about, which is they can't accept change. They can't accept change. I mean, and I think it was Zeta Alpha who said this, but that's what the 3 Elven rings were made for.
Was to resist change.
Keep things from changing.
Right. They were meant to preserve.
And, it's a fortunate or unfortunate it's a fortunate or unfortunate side effect, but the world changes, life changes, things change.
Yeah, like it's inevitable. And maybe that's what the elves are meant to represent, is sort of like the previous generation that just can't wrap their head around the way the world is different now. And that's something that continues to this day. As he's writing that in 1940, he might have been experiencing some of that himself, having being a man old enough to have a child fighting in that war himself. And he certainly experienced that with the people that came before him. The previous generation of people from Tolkien, they grew up in they were the first generation to grow up with things like telegraph being kind of everywhere. But then Tolkien's generation was the first to grow up with things like radio and the internal combustion engine in a format that was accessible to a lot of people, cars. And then he was getting older and he couldn't. People always have a difficulty entering into the world of the younger. The same way we think that elder people can't use computers very well. The way that like my kids can interact with technology in a way that I can't, or they understand the world in a way that I can't. And this idea of like, no, we want to hold things the way they are, and we want to prevent change. I mean, it's a fool's errand, because the world is going to change whether you want it to or not. And even if there's 3 incredibly powerful rings sitting, being wielded by a Maiar and 2 great elven lords, like that's still not enough to keep the world from changing.
Yeah, you can only. You can stave it off. That's what they're trying to do in Lorien. That's what they're trying to do in Rivendell. That's what they're trying to do in what's Thranduil's kingdom called?
I just call it Mirkwood.
Yeah, let's just say Mirkwood. The name's not occurring to me right now. But you can't. Yeah, you can't stave it off. You can stave it off, but it's still going to happen.
Right, like you can't keep the world from changing, but I also think that it is valid to say you can preserve things. The rings may not keep the world from changing, but they can keep certain ideas from being lost to the world through their preservation.
No, absolutely.
Like the world that gave rise to the Mona Lisa, it just will never exist again. But the Mona Lisa can still sort of be a reflection of that time that later generations can look at and glean some knowledge about that part of history. And I think that might be sort of one of the ideas that is related to the elves here as well, because I don't know, one of the things that really struck me too was the way the elves talk about so they give these cloaks to the entire fellowship, and I think it's Sam or Mary is like, is this magic? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, is it magic?
That's why I always do the air quotes on magic.
They're like, it's elven. Like, they don't have a separation between what we might call magical ability. Although Galadriel also tells them, like, you say what I do is magic. You say what the enemy does is magic. Like how you can call them the same thing, I don't even know. So really, magic for them is just the things that they don't understand that other people can do.
Right. And I think that's a really big point about, the common sense of the hobbits is.
All Hail the Night Queen just made me laugh.
But I was thinking the same thing. One of the few things I liked from the Hobbit movies is that Thranduil was sexy as fuck. Yeah, as a straight man, Thranduil was sexy as fuck.
Agreed.
And taller than me.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'4".
Okay. I knew you were tall, but when I met you, you were mostly sitting down.
I was mostly sitting down. I was also mostly drunk, and you were mostly.
Yeah, I was doing that. I was doing what I do. It's green and grows out of the ground.
You were cutting the grass.
I was. Yeah, so we did meet, and for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, we did meet in real life at Con of Thrones in Nashville last year.
Yeah.
At a party.
And had a really good conversation.
Yeah. It was a great party. It was a lot of really great people there.
There were some really great people there.
I didn't say everybody there was great, but a lot of people there were great. We did not quite make 100% on that ratio, but oh, thank you, Lorien. Yeah, I assume you're talking about my Lyanna Stark cosplay, which is famous. Anyway, I digress. So, Lord of the Rings.
Cosplay's great. That's why I have to wear sunglasses all the time. Is because I got so used to wearing them to cosplay Crawley that I just have to wear them all the time now.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Light just messes with me.
Yeah. Oh no, Zeta! Uncle Sam monitors the THC. Unfortunate. Yeah, I don't have to answer to anybody on that front anymore.
Oh yeah, Zeta, you live in Canada. That's you guys don't have legal there.
Yeah. So as far as like anything else to do with these two chapters, again, a lot of what was going through my head was I know what's coming. I know how useful these gifts are going to be eventually to them. The rope, the cloaks. I mean, like Legolas gets a bow. And he already had a bow, if I remember correctly, but like, oh, this is the best kind, and it's got elf hair for a string and what have you. So
yeah, and it's also it's a long bow as opposed to a short bow, which he used a short bow. So it has I don't know if. Well, you and I have talked about it. You've hunted. Have you ever?
Yes.
Bow hunted?
No, I've never bow hunted, but I have shot a bow, like target practice with bow and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a total difference there between a long bow and a short bow.
Oh yeah.
Short bows are great if you're on the back of a horse, though.
Yeah, a long bow is really only good if you're standing. Like the longbow, Jolie, All Hail the Night's Queen says longbow is better. I don't know that I necessarily 100% agree with that. The technique for firing a longbow is an incredible pull. The technique for firing it takes a long time to perfect because you don't just, pull it normal. It's more of like you put it up over your head and then you come down. I don't know. It's yes. It can pierce plate armor. It's much more powerful, but it's also much harder to like draw and aim, and like you don't need a longbow to take out a deer. or a soldier for that matter, unless they're wearing plate armor.
Yeah, and even then, a short bow, especially if you're mounted, you have a significant advantage. You know, I mean, that's where the Mongols were able to take over.
Did we lose? Linda says she's just seeing a black screen. I'm not seeing a black screen, and I've got the stream up on my phone, so I imagine it's probably just you, Linda. Sorry.
I think it might just be your phone, Linda. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, every one of you who's here, I very much appreciate you coming out and listening to us ramble on about advantages of different type of weapons.
I mean, it's fair. It's part of it, you know. Like, I made fun of like Sam's dirt that he gets, but real talk, I straight up jacked that for my D&D game at some point, where I gave somebody a box full of dirt that no matter what they planted in it would grow a tree that produced fruits of whatever you planted. So like I had my characters like plant, I think they planted a ruby because they needed rubies for spell components. So they planted a ruby, and then within a week they had a tree that its fruit was rubies. So yeah, I made fun of it, but I still stole it.
No,
that's what a good dungeon master would do, though.
I think with the gifts, Sam's gift and Gimli's gift were by far the two best.
Yeah, the least useful in, say, a wartime setting, but maybe the best from like a storytelling or a thematic point of view. Like the idea that Sam's gift is only useful if he sees the quest all the way through to the end. It is useless until he does that. But once he does that, it's going to give, like his garden is going to be more fruitful than anywhere else in the world, more or less, because basically Lorien he will have a little piece of Lorien in the Shire after Lorien itself is already gone.
Yeah, and also he's going to be able to recreate it. I mean, after all this horrible stuff has happened there, he can bring it back. It always makes it a point that he puts like a pinch here, a pinch there, all the places that there was something beautiful. There had been something beautiful, and he oh. Would you agree with me here that Fellowship is told from Frodo's perspective? The Two Towers is told from Aragorn and Sam's perspective. And the third book's told from Sam's perspective.
I mean, having not read them in too long, I can't necessarily 100% say that, but like, given what I know goes on in those stories, I can absolutely see why that could be an interpretation. Again, I don't feel confident to make that interpretation myself. Did you guys talk about the File of Galadriel? We did not.
No, we didn't. We should have. But
yeah, we've still got time. Although it might be my turn to pee for a minute.
Please.
All right, I'll be right back. Feel free to talk about that. I'll be right back.
And actually, I've been kind of negligent about saying hello to everybody. There are a number of new people here that I know are fans of Stephen. And thank you all so very much for coming out. It really means quite a bit to me. I do have some of my own followers here, but it it's great. Zeta says piss in the backyard while you smoke. Fair enough. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions that you don't have to be scared of spoilers for? Because as I said, here there be dragons, or here be dragons, as my guest has commented.
Sorry, what was that? I missed something.
Oh no! I was just asking if anybody had any questions that they weren't concerned about spoilers for.
Right.
I think another thing about these two I really love the internal conflict that it shows that every character has,
Especially like Boromir, Aragorn, and Frodo. Like them especially. I feel like it shows all three of them unsure of what the path ahead is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Aragorn, you know, he doesn't want to neglect his duty, but it's not something that he wants. You know, which I've always said makes the best leaders is people who don't want the power they have.
Right. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. The absolute best leaders are there because they feel like they have to be, not because they want to be.
Yeah. I personally, being a person who lives in a democratic republic, I think that the people who are in power want to be in power, and that's usually a detrimental thing. In Boromir, like I personally, I remember when I read this when I was young, and I thought of him very much as a villainous character.
As a what?
As a villainous character.
Okay.
And the older I get, the more I get him.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why you would read him as villainous as a child, but as an adult who's seen some things also, you tend to be more like, I can understand. I have made decisions in my life based on things I feared might happen that were not the best decisions at the time. And that's the same thing that he's doing.
He's a person who wants to defend their home. And I can totally understand that, especially given this day and age that we're living in right now.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. He doesn't realize what the ring would do to him, which Galadriel does, but he wants it so he can defend his home. But he doesn't realize the way
he wants it for the right reasons, but it's like it's I don't know. It's like a nuclear weapon. I want it because it will help protect me, but like when you have that kind of power, you can't wield that power without being destructive in ways that you can't foresee. And the Ring of Power is the same way. As Galadriel said, like that would be the start of it, but it wouldn't be the end of it. I would start by trying to put things right, but the end would be a dark queen as terrible as the dawn, and Kate Blanchett with her arms outstretched, and
amazing casting, by the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing casting. I think I say this every week. The Lord of the Rings films I love. I give an A+. The Hobbit films I kind of give a C. But I think the casting is great. And Catherine actually brings up a very good point. Meriadoc and Pippin are hardly even mentioned in these two chapters.
Yeah. They I noticed that myself, that like I don't even know if they both are mentioned at all. I know at least one of them is, but
Well, they're mentioned when they get their cloaks.
right. Yeah.
And their gifts from the elves. But yeah, essentially, yeah, they're pretty much left out of these two chapters. Also, keep in mind that these are two very short chapters. I mean, I think it's total of like 30 pages between the two.
If it's even that much. In my copy, it went from page 344 to 369. I think. So that's like 25 pages. You're right. They were not. It was not that long.
All hail the Night's Queen. Oh yeah, Voltaire, by the way, one of my favorite writers of all time. The best form of government is a benevolent tyranny with the occasional assassination. Son Tivia says Boromir has the best intentions, but he really doesn't get it. He's already corrupted.
He's already decided what he thinks should be done with the Ring of Power. He doesn't really want to, intentions being what they are, that's fine. He doesn't want to hear anybody else's take on it,
Right. And these chapters also show, I think, how characters are torn. Like, Aragorn with his thoughts about like what he was originally going to do was go with Boromir to defend Minas Tirith. Well, now Gandalf's gone. So who's going to help the hobbits out? And also, who's going to, because Minas Tirith does need to be defended. I mean, it does. Like has been said, Boromir has the best of intentions. I really think he does. He wants to defend his people, and he thinks that defending his people defends pretty much the rest of the world. And he's right. He is right, but his way of going about it might not be.
Yeah, like I can be like Boromir to me, as you said, when you were younger, you read him as very villainous. I'm actually find him to be very sympathetic character because like he is he just wants to do what's right, but he doesn't necessarily want to take anybody else's. He's made up his mind already what he thinks is right.
Yeah.
But like you can't wield absolute power without being corrupted, which again is that thing that the ring has always represented, is that absolute power. It's called the Ring of Power.
Yeah, and it an absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, it's the very nature of it. The very nature of having it is. It's like you were saying, like Galadriel says, you know, it would start off that way, but
Right.
then,
Yeah, but once you know what the Ring of Power is and how it, you know, we don't know how it works, but we more or less know what it does. Like it debuffs your psychic defense stat.
we're getting really gamer nerd here.
Oh man, look. Those of you who know me know I can turn anything back into D&D talk. Anything. I could stat the Ring of Power if you'd let me.
Could you stat the Fellowship?
Yeah, probably.
Like,
I mean, maybe that would be a fun stream to do sometime, to stat out some characters from Lord of the Rings with D&D stats.
like Boromir. How would you stat out Boromir?
Okay, so Boromir is clearly a fighter in class. He is above 5th level, but less than 10th level. I have to think about like exactly what, but he is also like, I mean, are we giving him 5th edition stats? Because if so, he is a battle master fighter. Because he clearly has like statted to being a leader and like a military leader, as opposed to just an out and out. He spent some time learning how to lead soldiers, as opposed to just getting better and better and better with a sword and other weapons.
Yeah, I'd give Boromir 16 strength.
Okay.
15 dex.
I think his dex is lower than that, but like that's splitting hairs. Here's where he falls short, though. He doesn't have the highest wisdom stat. Matter of fact, he might have the lowest wisdom stat in the entire Fellowship, which is why he's susceptible to the ring itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe like an 8 wisdom, 10.
Yeah, I could see that. 10, 12 intelligence, 10, 12. I mean, he's fairly charismatic.
Yeah, I give him a pretty high charisma.
Okay, Sean Bean is fairly charismatic. Boromir, maybe not as much.
Well, he's a leader. I mean, he's not just a leader by his birthright. He's also like he's a leader by his skills. So yeah, I would say he has relatively high charisma, probably like 14 to 16.
Yeah, but that wisdom stat, man, and the thing is, that's the stat you need to resist the One Ring.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Boromir is a fighter class, a battle master subclass fighter, if I'm being specific.
Zeta Alpha says Boromir had good strength, but dex not so much. I don't agree. I think he was very dexterous.
Well, I don't think he was exceptional in dexterity. 15 is actually a pretty high stat.
Yeah, agreed. I'd say maybe like a 13.
Okay, yeah. 12, 13, somewhere in there. Because he clearly like is capable. But yeah, we're way off in the weeds now, man. But yeah, you like you almost have inspired me to try to stat out the entire Fellowship. Yeah. For those of my friends that are here, that are part of my Slack group, I believe we're supposed to do a watch party tonight. So we'll start that out as soon as we're done streaming here, because we were supposed to start here in about 4 minutes, and even if we ended this right this second, I wouldn't be there in 4 minutes. Sorry. So yeah, we'll start that as soon as we're done here. But like, I'm having a great time talking. Don't let me rush you.
Yeah, he's not Legolas. Legolas has like a fucking 20 dex, dude.
Yeah, a 20 dex for sure. And like, but like, and I will tell you this: Legolas also a fighter, not a ranger.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a lot of people, like he uses a bow. He's got to be a ranger. Trust me, if I'm playing D&D and I want to make the ultimate archer, I'm playing a fighter, not a ranger.
Oh yeah, yeah. You have so many more options because you can. Well, you have so many more options because you can. You can single path that thing as opposed to like a ranger's like all over the place. I'm not a remote fan of 5th edition rangers.
They are the second weakest class in the game. Only monk is worse.
Oh, monks are badass if they get high enough level.
Okay, but like I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait till like 13th level to be awesome. You know? This sorry. But I agree. If monks can be an amazing class, but they don't get their good stuff until like at least 10th or 11th level. And I don't think rangers ever get there. And it's because they're trying to be a fighter, they're trying to be a druid, and they're trying to be a rogue all at once. And they just end up being like not great at any of it.
Yeah. Absolutely agreed. But yeah, Frodo's dreams. I think are actually prophetic as opposed to theoretically prophetic.
Right. They're not they're like Galadriel's visions are sort of predictive, but not necessarily like set in stone. But you're feeling like Frodo's dreams are.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, good night, Catherine. Thank you for coming out and staying up so late. Because I know it's like, what the fuck o'clock over there.
Yeah, good night, Catherine.
But yeah, I think his dreams are actually prophetic, whereas what you see in Galadriel's mirror, as she says herself, is what may be.
Right. Which, you know, what may be, that could be some great information, you know. But like even then, it's very clear that if you actively try to stop the thing that might be, you're only just making it happen, which means that, like, I guess you shouldn't try to stop the thing that you don't want to happen. You try to make happen the thing that you do want to happen. Like be positive about your choice making rather than don't make choices based on what you don't want to happen. Make choices based on what you do want to have happen.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about Oedipus. Like, you know, I can't for the life of me remember his freaking name, but his father, you know, if he hadn't made the decisions that he made, none of those things would have happened.
Right.
But he made those decisions that he made because you know, it's like any oracle, any there are people who are into astrology or different forms of divination. I read tarot cards.
Okay.
And I always say, basically what the cards tell you is this is where you were, this is where you are, this is where you're going to go if you keep staying where you are. But nothing's set in stone.
Right.
Yeah,
there's a whole conversation about determinism and predestination that I could have about this too, but that's a whole other 2-hour conversation.
Absolutely.
And I would get very philosophical and very scientific at the same time.
I do want to address a question that Zeta Alpha has is why are hobbits so
because of all Hobbit wants out of life is to eat, drink, and live that pastoral life. They in general, hobbits reject the trappings of power, and the One Ring represents sort of the absolute power, which is not something hobbits really desire. We only see that it affects them once they've been very close to it for quite some time.
Well, one of the things we get into at the end of the Two Towers when Sam has oh, and by the way, Sontevia, thank you, Laius. Thank you so much. That was going to drive me nuts. I was going to be up all night trying to remember that. Laius was Oedipus' father.
It wasn't gonna keep me up. I'm gonna sleep well tonight, no matter what.
But they don't want power, and that's why they're resistant to a lot of this domination. We even have that moment at the end of the Two Towers when Sam has the ring and he thinks to himself, like, because he's a gardener. I mean, that's his profession. That's what he does. He likes his flowers and he likes his taters. Taters precious. But he thinks to himself, I could turn the whole world into a garden. And then he's like, no, that would be really messed up. Like, people wouldn't be able to do what they want to do. And yeah, it's hobbits have a lot more common sense than men or elves or dwarfs.
Right. Well,
I would go so far as to say even more than some Maya do.
Yeah. Like there's something to be said about just, having a desire for that simple life.
Oh yeah.
I'm telling you though, I would not be able to resist the Ring of Power. I wouldn't. I'd be Boromir. I just know I would, and I would do it from a place of like wanting to do right by people, but like when you start changing a person, that's a very slippery slope. Like at some point, it's more about enforcing your will and your vision of what the world should be, as opposed to like a fair, balanced. Oh, I don't like this guy. Let me mess him up a little bit just because he annoyed me. It's a very slippery slope.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. It's insidious, the way the ring affects people
Mm-hmm.
is insidious. It's like cockroaches, like they just creep in, and you don't notice, but then all of a sudden your whole house is covered in cockroaches.
Right. Yep, I agree. I've heard a million metaphors. Cockroaches is as good as any metaphor I've heard for that thought before.
Well, thank you. Hey, everybody! I just got a compliment from Stephen Starr.
I hand them out like cookies. Don't. Sorry. I mean, yeah. So, not that you should not want compliments or whatever, but my compliments are meaningless. I compliment everyone. You're welcome.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you get off of here so that you can.
Oh, okay.
Get your stuff done.
Unless
was there anything else you wanted to address?
There's nothing I can think of off the top of my head, but I also feel like, and I do want to thank you for the invite. And it tells me that like I enjoyed this. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. So like I think I need to have you come over and join me sometime in the not too distant future on Here Be Dragons, and we'll talk about something that's probably not Tolkien, but something else that you can speak passionately about.
Yeah,
I'd love to have you come over. Like, we're a small channel. You're a small channel. We got to look out for each other. And actually, there's a few people who are content creators in the chat right now that are my friends who run their own small channels. All Hail the Night's Queen is one. Voice of Geekdom is one. John Webster Film, who was in here earlier, is one. And we all try to do cross promotion is big for we small timers.
Well, help people out because.
Right.
You and I have spoken of this before. There are some great big content creators.
There are some fantastic big content creators,
but a lot of them are rubbish.
There are some who are not worth the battery power that I used to watch them,
and
or I would have used to watch them.
I'm not going to mention any names.
I'm not either.
Yeah, I don't. That's not the type of thing I do. But all hail the Night's Queen. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream. I hope to see you again next week. I'm not sure who my guest is going to be next week, but I will work one out.
And you do basically two chapters a week, right?
Correct.
So your next one is The Great River and then The Breaking of the Fellowship, which will end book 1.
Correct.
Nice. That ought to be really good stuff. Oh, you're right. Amy Blackfire has a channel too. Amy Blackfire has been in the chat. She wasn't here at the very beginning, but she's been in the chat. She also has a channel. She's great.
If anyone out there would like to guest on my show, please drop it in the comment section down below.
Or if you're one of my friends, like I'll hook you. You're on Twitter, and I'm certainly happy to pass a message along as well. But yeah,
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm not doing the Instagram thing everybody tells me to, but God only gave me so many minutes.
Right.
And I only have so much time in my day. But no, thank you so much for being here. This was great. I loved talking these 2 chapters with you. I would like to have you back on the show again. Maybe in a few weeks if you'd be interested.
I had a blast and I would love to come back. Thank you.
But in the meantime, everybody, please PLUR. Be excellent to one another. Party on. And keep sailing west.
Yeah. Later, y'all.